All right, Knicks fans, we need to talk, because what's happening behind the scenes with this roster right now is honestly making my blood boil a little, but also giving me a sliver of hope. So stick with me here. Let's start with the obvious problem. Mitchell Robinson's future in New York is hanging by a thread, and not because the front office wants it that way. From everything coming out of the organization, it sounds like ownership, James Dolan specifically, is not exactly thrilled about backing up the truck for a center who spent more time in a walking boot than on the actual court the last couple seasons. And look, I get the financial caution to some degree, but this is a guy who alters shots, who controls the paint, who does the dirty work that doesn't show up on a stat sheet, but absolutely shows up in playoff wins. Losing him for nothing because ownership wants to play it cheap would be an absolute disaster for this team's identity. But here's where it gets interesting, and where I want you to really pay attention, because this front office might have actually outsmarted the situation a little bit. During this year's draft, the Knicks front office did something low-key brilliant. They didn't just sit there with one pick and call it a day. They went out and stockpiled second-round selections, ended up with something like 6 extra picks across both nights, and used them to grab guys like Jack Cahill at 39 and Tyler Nickel at 47. Now on the surface that might look like roster filler, the kind of moves that get buried under bigger headlines. But I think there's a real strategy here, and it's smarter than people are giving it credit for. Drop a comment below if you actually watched the draft live, because I want to know what you thought when you saw New York grabbing pick after pick instead of making a flashy move. Here's the thing about NBA trades that casual fans sometimes miss. You can't just throw John Q. roster filler into a trade for a starting caliber backup big man. The money has to match up under the new collective bargaining agreement. And Dolan apparently doesn't want this front office sending out extra cash to balance a deal either. So what do you actually have available to offer? You got guys like Packham Dadiet, who's set to make around $3 million next season, and maybe Tyler Kolek, if you're willing to pair him into a package. Individually, those guys don't move the needle in a trade. Nobody's giving up a quality backup center for Dadiet straight up. But attach 2, 3, 4 of those fresh second-round picks to a guy like Dadiet, and suddenly you've got a package that actually has some juice to it. And that's exactly why hoarding those second-rounders during the draft mattered so much. It wasn't about who they picked necessarily. It was about creating ammunition, real, usable trade chips that other front offices will actually pick up the phone for. If you're with me on this and you think the front office deserves a little credit here for once, smash that like button right now. Because honestly, this team needs some positive vibes after the year we just had. So let's talk names, because this is where it gets fun. If the Knicks send out Dadiet by himself, plus however many second rounders it takes, you're realistically looking at guys in that $2 to $3 million range. Think Ryan Kalkbrenner, Jonathan Magbo, M.O. Gay, Jay Huff, Micah Potter. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend any of these names get the Garden rocking the way Mitchell Robinson does when he throws down an alley-oop and screams at the rafters. But these are serviceable bigs who can rebound, protect the rim a little, and not be a complete liability if Robinson walks. Now, if New York is willing to go bigger and attach Kolek into the package alongside Dadiet, the ceiling goes up. Now, you're talking about names like Kyle Filipowski, Yves Missy, even Thomas Orber, guys who are a tier above the bargain bin options and who could realistically step into a real rotation role. That's a much more exciting outcome, and it shows you why protecting that pick stockpile actually has real value beyond just collecting names for the sake of collecting them. But, and this is a big but, none of this happens in a vacuum. Whether Kolek even gets included in any deal depends heavily on what happens with Landry Shamet. If Shamet sticks around, Kolek's value to this roster changes, and the front office has to decide if they're comfortable thinning out their guard depth to thicken up the front court. It's a chess match, and honestly, it's one piece of why I trust this front office a little more than I trust ownership right now. What do you guys think? Should the Knicks be willing to give up Kolek in a deal like this, or is he too valuable to the rotation to risk it? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to see this turn into a real debate down there. Now, let's get real for a second, because I have to be honest with you as a fan, and not just someone reading you a press release. This entire situation, needing to scrap together second-round picks and bargain bin trade exceptions just to maybe, possibly find a serviceable backup center. This is a direct result of ownership refusing to properly invest in keeping continuity on this roster. Mitchell Robinson earned his next contract. He's earned the benefit of the doubt after fighting through injuries and still showing flashes of being one of the best defensive bigs in this entire league when healthy. The fact that the front office might have to get cute with trade packages just to replace him, instead of simply paying a guy who already proved he fits, that's frustrating. That's the kind of thing that makes Knicks fans feel like we're always one step behind, always scrambling instead of building. At the same time, I have to give this front office their flowers for actually preparing for the worst case scenario instead of getting caught flat-footed. Stockpiling those second-round picks during the draft wasn't flashy. It didn't trend on social media, but it might end up being one of the smartest things this organization did all offseason. It's the difference between a front office that reacts to problems and one that anticipates them. So where does that leave us heading into the rest of the offseason? Watch the day-to-day rumors closely, because that name is going to be the centerpiece of almost any deal in this range. Watch what happens with Shamet, because that decision unlocks or locks out the bigger Kolek packages. And obviously, keep one eye on Robinson's actual contract situation, because if Dolan has a change of heart and they get a deal done to keep him, a lot of this conversation becomes irrelevant in the best possible way. Before you go, if this breakdown helped you understand what's actually going on behind the scenes with these trade packages, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow and helps me keep bringing you these deep dives instead of just surface-level headlines. And seriously, get into that comment section. Tell me who you want to see in a Knicks uniform replacing Robinson, if it comes to that. Tell me if you trust this front office. Tell me if you're as frustrated with ownership as I am. I'll be reading and replying down there. That's where things stand right now. Stay locked in, because this trade market is going to move fast, and I'll be right here breaking down every single update as it happens.